Hi, everybody. Matt Lawton here with a special edition of the Astrological Winds channel and a blog on the equinox chart set for the USA. I love to do these quarterly charts on the equinoxes and solstices and set them for Washington, D.C. to take a look at what to expect in our country for the next 3 months. And a lot of people think a lot of astrologers say this one is even valid for a year, the spring equinox chart. And, if you're from another country and you do astrology, you can always set the equinox chart to the capital of the country that you're in and do the same thing, get an idea of what's going on. So I'm going to go through this chart and just a couple of things here. The Astrological Winds channel is a free video blog that I do on YouTube. It's also available on podcasts. Just look it up under Astrological Winds channel. But if you have a YouTube account, please become a follower. And don't forget to turn your notifications on. And also, the blogs are available on my website, www.astrologicalwinds.com, all one word, astrologicalwinds.com. And there's my contact there and also all my professional services. So anyway, let me get into this special blog. And so I always have had an interest in mundane astrology. Being a professional astrologer, it's my job to be an observer, right? Not only and a detached and objective observer, not only of people's charts, but also history and what we call mundane astrology, the astrology of humans and civilization and society and countries and the leaders of countries and the masses. So mundane astrology, is the reason it's so interesting is because we get to see the effects of the astrology on these mass terms, like how people on mass levels, through their leaders, through countries, or through groups, like work within the forms of the astrology and what's going on in their nations at the time and what's going on. So this chart is just like wow, you guys. Like, there's two things that just immediately jump out on this chart right away that are just so fitting for what's going on in this nation. The first one is right here: Pluto rising conjunct the ascendant in the 12th house. Okay, that's a very powerful statement. The other one is this giant stellium with Mercury and Venus both retrograde, the sun down there too, Neptune, the north node, and Saturn all straddling the Aries Pisces line and in the second house of resources, plus a Chiron and Eris conjunction in that house too, although not part of the stellium because they're a little bit of too much of a separation between Mercury and Chiron. An incredible amount of energy focused in the second house of resources and banking and money and assets. So just two massive statements made. If you're a professional astrologer and into mundane, you can see right away these are just two huge statements that are going to have a massive effect and are already really having that effect. I mean, we're 10 days into this quarter already, and we can really see how this energy is playing out. So, the first one, the Pluto rising conjunct the ascendant, and by the way, that's Pallas Athene there too, the asteroid Pallas Athene, both in Aquarius. So that's kind of interesting there. And like I said, both of these things are going to indicate very trying times ahead for the US, at least for this quarter, if not for the next year. Like I said, a lot of astrologers really think the spring equinox chart is a chart that's imprinted on the year. I have a tendency to think that the winter solstice one is more like that, but I can agree that we will see the repercussions of this stuff likely for at least a year and whatever it hands off to next. But Pluto on the ascendant and rising in the 12th house literally shows that there is a great transformation occurring in the nation and that it's bringing irrevocable changes to our society, and that that has triggered many fears and a lot of power mongering. That's really what that means more than anything. I mean, just, Pluto is all about transformation. And so when it's connected to the cross of matter, in this case, the ascendant, one of the two most important points in the cross of matter, it really is what we will be living as a nation in our lives, all of us together and individually being affected by that. And when Pluto brings transformation, those changes you can't go back. They're irrevocable. Okay. And it has a lot to do with power, Pluto. Pluto is a power tripper. So it shows the changes are part of a forced power, power mongering, power tripping. And the fear part is because of the 12th house. I mean, Pluto is also has a lot to do with fears that are being driven from subconscious places, from the collective. And that's what the 12th house is all about, too. So that, so it's literally showing that the energy behind this change is there's a lot of fear. Now, the Pallas is kind of interesting too, because Pallas Athene is the asteroid that represents the daughter in the female archetype. And so the relationship comes out as an intellectual relationship. It represents intellect, and it's very much. It's interesting that it's in Aquarius because that's how Pallas can be. She can be very, very like stuck and stubborn on the ideas that she has. She's very intellectual, very cool, insensitive emotionally, even. And once again, Aquarius is a dualistic sign. So this shows that these transformations, these changes that the US is being forced through right now is creating a great conflict between different sides that have different belief systems that, with Pluto can lead to violent acts, which, we've already seen some of this stuff starting to play out, when you think even about like, just a lot of ways, really. So part of what that is too, since, just like the ascendant in a birth chart, the rising sign in a nation's chart also has a lot to do with the personality that we are projecting out to other countries. So our relationships with other countries, therefore, are also transforming at the same time. They're going into new forms, and there can be a great crisis in relation to this. And we can actually be being perceived as out of touch with reality from the perspective of our allies and other countries that have worked with us in the past, that have an emotionally deep connection with us. So Pluto also, especially when it's rising, shows things that have not been revealed before, secret things that have been hidden from us. And what that actually shows is that there usually are weak points that have been hidden from us. And this is showing these weak points can lead, once again, to Pluto energy, destruction, if they are continued to being ignored. So anything that's being exposed as weak right now can get very, very destructive in the United States if we continue to ignore that stuff. And remember too, Pluto has the energy of coercion, so therefore it's very compulsive in its actions, and that Pluto also represents power or authority, and those that lead a nation, that are shaping the energy for the nation as a whole. This is all Pluto stuff. So our leadership can actually be very unaware of their effects, of their actions on the populace and on other countries. They can actually be seen as the power trippers who are trying to take control of everything. And that's exactly what the US has going on right now. It literally can get into a battle of wills with other nations or even within a nation with this kind of energy. So, like the proclivity for energy leading toward, especially with Neptune and Aries too, like going into Aries, the proclivity for war is a lot more possible now with the way the energy is, you know. And so, like this battle of will, and that can actually take place within too. I want to make that clear. That can be a civil war kind of energy too. Um, so what so the U.S. is actually really being called right now to see how our power affects the world. And really, when it comes to Pluto, if you don't want destruction, the best thing to do is to be helpful and effective in trying to help the world face problems together with our allies, with other nations. Pluto is not kind to selfishness. Pluto brings self destruction to selfishness, and that can happen on a massive scale. It's one of the trans it's one of the outer planets that transform all of society. And if the US could be helpful instead with the power that we have, that it would benefit as many people in the world as possible, that would actually be the best way to get favors from Pluto and avoid total destruction. But that also is a rebirth, right? That's still a change. That's still something that's irrevocable. And I'm not like saying what's the right or wrong thing to do here or make a political statement. This is just what Pluto is saying. This is how Pluto operates, right? So Pluto is the shadow of the nation, and when it's rising, like many other things that are hidden or secret, things are going to come to light. Things that are dying and other things are being born, and it's difficult to tell right now what will be good in the long run and what will not be good in the long run of those things that are dying off and the other things being born to replace them. Pluto does not have a clear vision, okay? Pluto's obsessive, it's narrow minded, it's stuck and stubborn. So when it's making judgments, it's usually not good judgment. It's not a clear vision. And that's why it's hard to tell whether any of this stuff the US is going through is going to be effective in the long run or not, or if it's actually going to bring even more pain, rather than effectiveness, make things even worse. So that the jury will be out, so to speak, on that for a while. Pluto's a long-term changer. Um, but Pluto many times teaches through on the collective level through violence, through war, through violent and power tripping kind of acts. And Pallas Athene's not going to help. Pallas Athene can obsess us in our thinking that we're right and that everyone else is wrong. So obviously, the US is playing with some very dangerous energy right now. And obviously, other nations that were considered allies can perceive this danger in us. And Pluto in the 12th is an indicator that the energy is coming from a deep fear within the nation that we are actually losing our strength and power. And that deep hidden characteristics of the nation's psyche are starting to be exposed now. And the more we try to deny that energy and hide it, the more it will rear its ugly head in many different forms. It will become more like the Hydra, where it won't just be one thing. There'll be a lot of things. Basically, right now, the U.S. is going through an emperor wears no clothes situation as a collective together. The emperor and the collective and the nation wears no clothes right now. The nation, in a sense, is being called upon to actually confront itself and how it protects its power and controls issues and projects that stuff out onto the rest of the world, our own collective fears. Events that are buried in the nation's past may come back in some form or another that need to transform. So we may end up regretting alienating certain other people and other nations from the past. And indeed, this is a very important time for the United States to understand its influence on the world. If it doesn't, it can become quite destructive. But if it does, it can become quite transformative and benefit the world. Now, just as equally intense as all this stuff going on in the second house. Now, if you follow my blog, I've been talking a lot about the Mercury Venus retrograde the last 2 weeks or so, and how this was going to be a low point for the world, with Neptune there, the eclipse season going on, Neptune going into Aries, um, all kinds of stuff shifting right now. 2025 is a very key changing time for the world, and a very dangerous time too. And so all the energy centered down here in the second house, where there's 7 planets in the stellium among 6, including Mercury and Venus. Both of them weak in Aries, really. Venus super weak in Aries, but Mercury really has no dignity there either, and retrograde. So what's the second house about? Assets, money, resources, banking, the economy, the wealth and security of the nation. What this shows is it's going to be under great pressure this quarter at least. And I've been predicting an economic downturn for a couple months now, even just based on all that retrograde energy. But you can see it is slamming the US right in the house that represents all that stuff, especially to people, people having money in their pockets, literally, you know. So there's going to be a lot of pressure, and the Neptune really shows that there's idealism that is driving this stress. Very idealistic notions when it's conjunct the Sun and Venus and Mercury, both retrograde. There's going to be a lot of confusion, a lot of anger, at the very least, as we watch the economy go backwards. People are feeling really insecure about their resources under this energy. There can be a lot of deception involved that's either purposeful or just not a thorough understanding of the situation while trying to apply certain ideals that's adding more to the confusion. And even the North Node down there, that's the eclipse point. Shows that it's our common destiny to go through this together as a nation. And Saturn down there shows it's affecting all the government institutions. And it can bring up a lot of fear and reactions that are going to resist that kind of change. So it's really interesting, the energy going on right now. And also note the Chiron Eris conjunction, although not part of the stellium, right? This is showing complete chaotic changes to our resources that can bring great pain to all of us as a nation. Unfortunately, with this Neptune and Saturn together, affecting the Sun and Mercury and Venus retrograde, there can be subversive tactics that are being used that are creating a lot of these issues. Or there can be delusions of grandeur that are not only confusing and illogical, but just are not, that literally can be deceptive. It's interesting to note, too, that the ruler of the second house, Pisces on the cusp, is Jupiter in Gemini, in a very weak sign, in detriment, right? In Gemini, Jupiter's in detriment, and shows that usually intellectual ideas are being are being pushed without realizing the emotional and moral damage and debris that they're leaving behind. It's interesting too that Jupiter is opposite the moon in the 10th house in Sagittarius, because the moon is the people and the 10th house is the executive branch. And like a lot of these ideas that the executive branch are bringing, which are causing a lot of these issues, are very Sagittarian in the sense that it's running off to the horizon without looking at the details of what the effects of that can be with your ideas, just trying to push change that's cutting edge because just out of belief. And it's a mutable T square with the asteroid series in the first house, which is the asteroid of mothering, of nurturing, of having the things that we need once again. So this belief in these ideas by the people are part of what's causing the stress in the nation and in the resources that that's this is like basically people asking whether they're going to be taken care of or not under these new philosophies and values and laws. That's really where what that's actually saying. The series, they are like, okay, half of the people agree with you, but have you taken care of the details, and are you sure we're all going to be taken care of? That's a really good question right now, that not only the common people are starting to have, but a lot of other people are starting to have that were part of this coalition. So, one of the other things to note too is the duality of all this. Not only the Aquarius rising, but both Gemini, where Jupiter is, and the Pisces energy, where the North Node, the eclipse point, and Saturn are. They're all dualistic signs. So, what is that doing? There's two sides to look at how everything is playing out in the US right now. And once again, that can cause great, great conflict, great conflict. Now, I've used most of my time just on those two things because that's what's really screaming on this chart. But just few other things going around the wheel. Um, in the third house, we have Uranus in the third house, right? And I really think, it's in good condition in the sense that it is locked into that sweet sextile to Saturn that I talked about in my monthly blog for April and in the annual blog for the year. That's really the best long-term transit this year. So I really think this is going to, this shows there'll be some technological advances this quarter or year in the US that are beneficial for communications and transformation. However, in a mundane chart, the third house also represents official announcements by the government. And with Uranus in there, it shows that they're very erratic or unstable or unreliable, even. So that's a challenge. And then also, this shows the third house represents the country's education system. And right now, there's major changes, major upsetting changes, revolutionary changes by having the federal education department literally being taken out. So that's really causing a lot of chaos in the third house. And also, the third house is your neighbors. So this is also indicating the chaos that we're having with neighboring countries, Mexico and Canada. The countries that border us right now are feeling really like we are the ones that are acting rebellious, towards them, and showing this Uranus influence in our communications in the third house. So very, very interesting there too. To take a look at the third house is really telling of what's going on right now. And check it out too. It's ruled. Taurus is on the cusp there, so it's actually ruled by Venus retrograde, which shows that's why we can't even like have good relationships or talk things out right now. Venus retrograde in Aries, I get my way, I'm not even going to listen to you. That's how a lot of our neighboring countries are feeling about us, and how people are feeling about how the education system's being brought in and how even the announcements are being made. And then the fourth house has, like I said, Jupiter in it. But notice also the part of fortune is conjunct the IC, which is the opposite of the MC point. So on the the cross of matter again is another point. And so this, indicates that there can be real world events that affect our homeland, things that we don't have control of. Many times that's with the fourth house, that's literally the communities and many times agricultural communities. So like this could be stuff from the repercussions of the tariffs even. Where we, because the part of fortune is like, what is our luck? And once again, Jupiter in that weak sign shows split ideology of the masses. The fourth house represents the masses, the people, and how they actually perceive nationalism. So there's two different ways of looking at that right now. And especially with the opposition to the moon, because the moon represents the people too. So it's literally like two sides fighting over the ideology of the nation right now. And one of them has the president on their side in the executive branch, and the other side opposes him. So once again, too, Venus retrograde is the ruler of the fourth house too. So there's no talking to each other. It's like you're the enemy, I'm fighting you. That's it. So, and then interesting in the sixth house, we have this very weak Mars in Cancer. Mars has been in Cancer for months and months, super weak there. Um, and also in that tight square to the Chiron Eris conjunction down in the second house, it is trine the Saturn, which is nice. But the sixth house, first of all, Mars represents the military and the police, and it's in very weak condition in Cancer, with decisions that are being driven by emotion rather than intellect. Well, really, the Defense Department of the new administration has made one misstep after another, and maybe is not even competent to do the job. And so you can see this week Mars and Cancer being put out, and it does seem like in an area where you really want to be cool and logical and intellectual, that they're using emotions to drive their decisions. So this can be very dangerous, and it's part of the reason why people's resources and security are feeling hurt too. And the sixth house also shows it's going to be a very challenging time for unions and anybody in the civil service. Well, of course, Mars and Cancer, they got all their, when they were fired from their jobs, a lot of them, they got all their resources taken away from them, including healthcare workers, which is the sixth house also. These are all people who got downsized in their work in the last few months. And no, although the seventh house is empty, it is interesting to note that Leo is the ruler of it, which makes the sun the ruler of the house, which represents the president, which means that he is the one dictating all the foreign policy right now, both to our allies and our enemies. And once again, dragging that energy back to the second house. And that's part of the reason that the economy and the resources and people are feeling threatened. This is idealism being pushed on allies and enemies, and it's very impulsive energy. The eighth house is also empty, if you'll notice, and that is ruled by Mercury retrograde because of Virgo on its cusp. And this is once again showing that international finance, international corporations are also struggling now, because of that Virgo energy. And then if you jump, the ninth house also is empty, but it's Scorpio on it, ruled by the very weak Mars and even the Pluto. And that is showing the power of the courts right now, how the courts feel like they are under attack from both sides in the equation. One side not thinking they're doing enough to stop the new agenda, the other side feeling like they're being blocked. So the courts are caught in the crosshairs of this violent energy and this very weak Mars that's like, who's supporting us? It's amazing how this chart is just fitting us right now, folks. Just really amazing. And the ninth house also represents universities and second education system. And they're also under attack. People being arrested for their freedom of speech. universities having their money taken away by power tripping. So very, very interesting how that's showing up too. And the 10th house, like I said, represents the president, the executive branch himself. The moon in Sag there conjunct Juno, the asteroid of partnership, shows that many people do have a partnership with the cutting edge ideas that he has. But as I said before, the opposition to Jupiter shows that many of these big promises are likely not spelled out well enough in detail to work, and they will actually threaten the security of the nation to meet its ability to get its resources and needs met with that square to Ceres. You know, it's interesting to note too, the 11th house, which is the house of Congress, is empty and ruled by Sagittarius, which is what the moon in Sag is. The moon is in, and also is ruled by that weak Jupiter, which shows that Congress is going right along with the executive branch in this situation and are not, trying to oppose it at all. So overall, I really feel like this chart is very reflective of what's going on in the US right now. And we'll see it for the next quarter, if not the next year. There's no doubt that no matter what side you're on politically, that you can see the chaos that these changes that we're going through right now and changing the nation. So this shows it's going to be a lot of energy that needs to be confronted, and that the economy is really going to be in trouble, and our relationships with other countries are going to be seriously stressed too. All right, this is Matt Lutton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. This is a free video blog that I do on YouTube as a weekly weather report as the normal thing. And if you like what you see, I'd really like you to become a follower if you have a YouTube account. So don't forget to turn your notifications on so you know when I post a blog. And I may actually do the inauguration charts still too. I haven't really had a chance to look at that, being so busy, but yeah, and remember, the blog is available on podcasts too. Just look up Astrological Winds channel. You'll find it out there. It's also available on Instagram. So if you want to follow it on Instagram, it'll show up on your newsreel. And it's always available on my website, www.astrologicalwinds.com. That's also where I list all my professional services. I have been a professional astrologer for over 20 years. I give all kinds of readings to individuals. I was trained for 7 years. Please look at the menu on the website, www.astrologicalwinds.com. You can contact me through the website or at matthuey823@gmail.com. If you're a beginner student looking for classes and that's starting up soon, and if you're a group who would like a lecture like this is a perfect example of a lecture I can give a group that, or a workshop or something, please get in touch with me and we can discuss how to set that up. All right. Thank you all very much. Like I said, I may do an inauguration chart if you're interested in this stuff. And if not, I will see you all next week for the weekly for the second week of April, the 7th through the 13th. Take care now.